Hey guys. I had something that I wanted to share, and it's a bit of a windy venting thing, and so I'm using Hank as a clickbait to get you to watch the whole thing. Didn't last long. Did you see how long it took before those streets are he's just like, fucking, I'm out of here. Hank, say goodbye. Anyway, here's my thing. So I've been acting for over 10 years in New York City, and I would never feel that I was at all qualified to do any sort of informative videos on how to act or tips of the trade or whatever. But the one thing that I do know, the one thing that I have absolutely learned in this business is what is not acceptable for an actress to have to deal with or tolerate. And so I have decided to make a couple of videos just to maybe help any new actors out there that just don't fucking know. Okay, so here's the thing. I have been fortunate, or I guess you could, in terms of me being sexually harassed or assaulted or anything like that, 99% of those occurrences have not been on a film set. They have been at a job or parties or a bar or whatever. It was very rare that I'd have to deal with any sort of sexual harassment or inappropriate behavior until last night. So I went to an audition, and no, it wasn't even an audition. I was cast. I was fucking cast. I received the email saying, hey, you have this role. We have the rehearsal. Great, fine. This role requires nudity, not a big deal. I'm used to nudity if any of you have seen a single one of my films. So I show up to this rehearsal. The director is the only person there. Also fine, not a big deal. That's how I auditioned. It was with just him. We go over the basics, and then he is like, oh, by the way, this rehearsal is nude. And that's when I say no. And he's like, oh, well, I've had all of the other actresses here, and they all rehearse nude. And I was like, okay, fine, but no, I'm not going to rehearse nude. One, because I never received any sort of acknowledgement stating that it was going to be a nude rehearsal. And two, you should never have to fucking rehearse nude for a film. I didn't say it that mean. I was nicer. So here's the rub. This is when he was like, oh, well, I was under the impression that this was a nude callback. Oh, I'm sorry. I was under the impression that I was cast in this role, and now you're trying to manipulate me into fucking taking my clothes off for a nude rehearsal? How is that going to help anything in terms of my acting ability? And then he dials it back because he can tell that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And then he says, okay, well, just how about you do the first line? I read the first line, and I'm like, he's just like, oh, I thought that you were going to do the first line nude. What? What? Anyway, I make it abundantly clear that I am not going to take my clothes off. And so then he begrudgingly agrees, and then we barely rehearse for the next 15 minutes, and it's done. And I went home, and I declined the role. So here's my thing. Here's my video. As an actor, you should never be required to rehearse nude in film. Okay? Never. It doesn't matter what their excuses. They're going to say, oh, well, if you've never done nudity before, you should blah, blah, blah. No. If they're worried about you backing out on the day of it, no. No. You should never you never should be required to rehearse nude for film. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've lost count of how many times I've done nude scenes. Never once in 10 plus years have I ever been required to rehearse fucking nude for film. Okay. So that is rule number 1. I'm going to leave it at that. It's just, I'm really upset because this hits home for me because I do remember when I was taken advantage of. And I didn't know any better, and I was naive, and I took my clothes off, and it changed me forever. It changed how I went about life. It changed me to the core. And I just don't want any new actors out there being taken advantage of to where it scares them away from pursuing their dream. Anyway, that is my diatribe. Thank you for listening. And yeah, I'm confident I can come up with a million more things that actresses and actors do not need to tolerate on a film set.